The Kimura is one of the most effective submissions in grappling. However, it is also a great position. You can utilize many effective follow-up attacks against your opponent if you have a diverse Kimura Trap system. This video focuses mainly on the Kimura Trap T position. With the Kimura T position, you want to keep your chest close to them, you want to keep their arm close to their body, and you want to keep your hips and legs close to them as well. Drive your legs and hips close to them and bring your leg over their shoulder so you can establish more control. Many grapplers feel a grip with no thumb provides you with better control with the Kimura Trap position, while a grip with the thumb around may provide you with a better grip to finish the Kimura submission. You should not have your knuckles turned up. This gives you a much weaker grip against your opponent's arm. When you have control of your opponent's wrist and arm, you should turn your knuckles downward. This provides you with much more control, and it's going to make it much harder for your opponent to rip their arm out just by straightening their arm against you. You also should not have your chest too far away from them and too far away from their arm. It'll make it much easier for your opponent to turn into you and escape your Kimura Trap position. When you keep your chest close to their tricep, it makes it much harder for them to escape the position on you. Along with that, make sure you do not have their arm too far away from their body. This will also give them an opportunity to escape much easier against you. By keeping everything tight and keeping their arm close, it keeps the position tight overall. And finally, don't keep your hips and legs away from them. It'll make it easier for them to escape also. Keep your legs close to them and ideally cover their shoulder with your leg for more control. You should not allow your opponent to turn towards you to escape. This will be one of the most common things your opponent tries to do against you. To prevent them from turning into you, push their hand and arm close to their chest. This is going to make it much harder for them to turn towards your head, and it's going to make it much more difficult for them to do one of the most common escapes against you. Your opponent may try to turn towards your legs in an attempt to escape as well. This is also very common, and this is something you do not want to let them do. When you feel them trying to turn away from you, you want to pull their tricep into your chest. By keeping their tricep close to your chest and keeping them tight close to you, it makes it much harder for them to turn away from you, and it makes it harder for them to use that Kimura Trap escape against you also. Don't be surprised if your opponent tries to drive their body over you so that way they can get more leverage to drop their elbow and escape the Kimura Trap. To stop them from driving their body over you, you want to feel their pressure and scoot your body with their pressure. So as they're driving into you, scoot back a little bit to make it harder for them to scoot their body over you. And your opponent may also try to slide their head down so they can get their head off your body, so it makes it much easier for them to turn and escape the Kimura Trap. This is why it's important to keep your hips and legs close to them, because it makes it much harder for them to slide their head down so they can escape. So keep your hips and legs close so they cannot slide down. You can establish the Kimura Trap T position from the side control Kimura. When you get the Kimura grip, if you hop over, you can then get behind them and get the T position. This is a good option for those who may like doing the Kimura Trap, but don't actually want to finish the side control submission. So when you get the Kimura, you can roll your body off, get above their head, slide your legs close to them, and get the Kimura Trap T position against them. Top half guard is one of the most common areas where people get the Kimura Trap position. Also, it's very common when your opponent tries to shoot an underhook that you get the Kimura Trap against them. When you work to get the Kimura position on them, lean forward, which then gives you the leverage to free your leg out. When you lean forward and roll over your shoulder, you get your body out and get the Kimura T position. When your opponent goes for a Kimura from the bottom half guard against you, you also have the opportunity to get the Kimura Trap position against them using one of the most common Kimura defenses. When they go for the Kimura against you, drive the hand of your trapped arm all the way up your chest as you push on their hip with your free hand. Then you want to lean over them so their elbow frees past your chest. When this happens, you then have the opportunity to get the Kimura Trap against them. So they go for the Kimura, you defend the Kimura, and then you counter their Kimura with your own Kimura Trap. You have a great opportunity to get the Kimura Trap against your opponent's deep half guard. When your opponent hugs your leg in the deep half guard, their arm is usually exposed for a Kimura position. When you establish the Kimura position, lean your body forward and then drive your hips over their head. When you do this, it will give you the opportunity to free your leg and get to the Kimura T position. When your opponent comes up from bottom half guard to get you in a dogfight position, it's very common for them to post on their bottom elbow. When they do this, it presents you with the opportunity to get the Kimura Trap on their bottom arm. So you reach around, get the Kimura grip on their bottom arm, roll over their body, and then get them into the Kimura T position so you can attack your system from there. You also have the same exact opportunity if they sit up for a single leg from the half guard. When they sit up for a single leg from the half guard, you can reach over their body, get the Kimura Trap position, and then roll over them and end up in the T Kimura Trap position. So when they go for the single leg, you reach for the Kimura Trap position. Now it's established, and then you roll over their body, and then you'll end up in the Kimura Trap T position so you can attack them. When you have the top turtle position, you can reach over their body and then get the Kimura Trap position that way. So you reach over the other side of their body, you establish the Kimura grip on them, and you tip them back. So you get the turtle, you reach over their body, tip them back, and get the Kimura Trap T position on them. I also like to establish the Kimura Trap crucifix. So I get the crucifix position with my legs, I roll, and now I have a Kimura Trap with the crucifix on them. So I get the crucifix with the Kimura Trap position from the turtle, and then I roll over so I can get this strong position. So you get the Kimura Trap, you trap their arm with your leg, then you roll over and you get them in the crucifix Kimura Trap. From the mount, swim through your opponent's arm and establish the Kimura Trap position from there. When you swim through your opponent's arm, you then roll off of them and you can then get the Kimura Trap T position against them. Swimming through your opponent's arms when you have the mount position is a very common scenario that many people use. Now when you do this common scenario, you can also set up the Kimura Trap against your opponents. If your opponent hugs around your body, they also expose their arm for the Kimura Trap. So when they hug around your body, you reach back, you establish the Kimura position, roll off of them, go over the head, and get the Kimura T position. While it's not the right decision, a lot of people do hug their opponents from the mount, and now you have the option to attack the Kimura Trap position against them from it. A high-level Kimura Trap setup is when your opponent tries to escape the mount with the elbow knee escape. So when they try to escape with the elbow knee escape, many times they're going to expose their arm as they transition to the half guard position. So when they go to escape and they transition to the half guard position, you have the opportunity to grab the Kimura Trap against them and then work your attacking system from there. A very common scenario where I will get the Kimura Trap T position is when my opponent tries to escape the back mount and they lean me to my weak side. So when they lean me to my weak side, I will then transition to the Kimura Trap from there. So they lean me to my weak side, I then transition my arms to a Kimura grip. I will then get off the back mount, get to the Kimura T position, and then I can start working all of my Kimura Trap attacks from there. If you go for a Kimura from the bottom half guard, it is very common for your opponent to possibly roll in an attempt to not get submitted. When they roll out, especially if their legs get freed, you then can get them into the Kimura Trap T position and then work your Kimura Trap system from this situation. A common counter to your bottom Kimura from half guard is your opponent might try to step around and go for an armbar. When they do this, make sure you keep their hand close to their chest and push it into their chest, so then that way you can roll them over and still counter them and get them in the Kimura T position. So then that way they do not counter you and you still get your attacks. Very similar to the half guard from the bottom, when you go for the Kimura from the closed guard, your opponent might try to roll to defend the Kimura so they do not get submitted. Keep the Kimura grip, so even if they do escape your closed guard, you can then end up in an attacking situation from the Kimura T position, and you can work all of your Kimura Trap finishes and attacks that you will learn within this video. A tricky setup against your opponent's sitting guard is to grab their wrist and then roll forward and then reach for a Kimura Trap against them. So you step in between their legs, you grab their wrist, you roll, bring your arm over their shoulder, and then you establish a Kimura Trap as you're rolling and end up in the T position. If my opponent grabs my leg from sitting guard, I find that the rolling Kimura Trap setup is even easier because there's an established connection. So they scoot forward, they grab my leg, I then reach over the shoulder and roll to the Kimura Trap T position so then I can work my attacking system. You can also set up the Kimura Trap against your opponent's single leg X guard. So when they get the single leg X guard, you push their leg off of your hip, then you reach for their wrist, roll and reach over their shoulder and get the Kimura Trap T position after that. So you clear their leg off your hip. You then grab their wrist, do a forward roll, and when you do the forward roll, you're going to reach over their shoulder, establish the Kimura grip, and end up in the Kimura T position at the end. You can also get the Kimura Trap against your opponent's single leg takedown attempt. You want to push their head on the inside, reach over their body, and then when you reach over their body, you sit down as you kick your leg that's in the middle upward and roll them to get the T position. This is a very effective way to counter the single leg takedown. So when they get the single leg position, you push their head on the inside, you get the Kimura grip, you sit down, kick them, and get them to the T position. When your opponent attempts to get a body lock against you from standing, you can transition to the Kimura grip while they're trying to do it. So they go for the body lock, you transition to the Kimura grip, you then put your foot on the inside of their thigh, sit down, and do a sumigation type takedown on them. So when they go for the body lock, you get the Kimura grip, you turn into them, you take them down, and you get the T position. When people do Kimura traps from the bottom, it's very common for them to do the spinning entry into the T position. For example, when you have the closed guard, you get the Kimura grip, you then release the closed guard, spin to the outside, and then get behind your opponent so you're in the T position. The spinning Kimura trap setups look fancy and they look hard to do, but these are done even at the highest level against the most elite grapplers. If you practice it, it'll become easier. The bottom half guard is one of the most common ways that people set up the spinning entry for the Kimura trap. So when you go for the Kimura from the bottom half guard, you release the leg from in between your opponent's legs, you spin to the outside, and then you establish the Kimura trap position from there. You will also be presented with opportunities to get the Kimura trap against your opponent from the reverse de la Hiva. This is very similar to the bottom half guard. When you have the reverse de la Hiva, you grab your opponent's wrist, you attack for a Kimura, you then release your position, spin around, get behind your opponent to the Kimura T position. A tricky but effective way to counter your opponent's over-under pass is to go for the Kimura trap. When your opponent goes for the over-under pass, you establish the Kimura grip. You then walk your body all the way around, spin, and then get behind your opponent so then that way you can get to the Kimura T position. This is one of the ways that you can use the Kimura trap to counter your opponent's attacks against you. The sliding back take is one of the most common attacks to do against your opponent when they try to turn towards your head. When they try to turn towards your head, they open up their hip space. You bring your knee inside that hip space, bring your other leg around their hip, and then you establish control of them, tip them back so that way you can then finalize your back control. This is a great way to take their back from this situation. While you slide your knee through when they turn towards your head, you can also bring your other leg over their head and attack for an armbar. So they go to turn into, you slide your bottom knee into that space, throw your other leg over their head, drop them back, and go for the armbar. This is a very simple and effective way to attack and go for a finish against them when you have the Kimura Trap. You also have the option to just bring your leg over their shoulder and go for an armbar that way. So you don't even need to bring the leg over their head to go for the armbar attack. This is very useful for people who do not have the dexterity to bring the leg over the head. So they turn into, you throw your leg over their shoulder, you drop them back, and you go for an armbar from this situation. When they turn towards your head and you bring your leg over the shoulder, you also have the option to go for a triangle choke instead. So when they turn towards you, you bring your outside leg over their shoulder, you bring your bottom leg through and switch to a triangle choke. This is actually a very effective way to attack for the triangle from this situation. So they go, you trap their outside shoulder, then you bring your other leg through and get the triangle on them. When they turn into, if you want to make your triangle choke even stronger, grab both of their legs and pull them in towards you. By doing this, you're going to create a lot of pressure on their neck and also a lot of pressure on their diaphragm, which is going to make it much harder for them to breathe. So you go for the triangle choke. When you get the triangle choke, you reach for both of their legs. You then pull both of their legs in close to you, which really crushes them and makes it much more devastating for them in this submission. When you go for the triangle choke, your opponent might grab their hands together in an attempt to reduce the pressure. You can then pull their hand and get them into an Americana lock. So you go for the triangle choke. They grab their hands together so they can reduce the pressure. But you're going to use this grip, grab their wrist, and pull their hand back across your body, which creates an Americana pressure on them, and it locks up their shoulder. This is a very tricky, but also a very useful submission to have. A simple and high percentage attack when your opponent tries to turn towards your head is to go for a north-south choke. So they go to turn towards your head, you reach your arm up and grab their neck, drop down and slide back to a north-south choke. This is one of my favorite attacks to do. If I can't stop my opponent from turning towards my legs, I will follow them up and start my attacking series from this upright Kimura position. So when they turn towards my legs, if I'm not unable to stop them, I will follow them up and attack them from this situation. When your opponent turns towards your legs and you follow them up, you can advance your position by stepping over their body and switching to the mount position. So as they go to turn towards your legs and you follow them up, step over their body first, then drive their arms over their head so then that way you can clear them out and clear them away so then that way you can establish the mount position. So they turn towards your legs, you follow them up, step over, and then establish the mount position from there. A submission option that you have when you follow them up when they turn towards your legs is a step over their body and then step over their head so that way you can attack for an armbar. So they turn towards your legs, you follow them up because you can't stop them, you step over their body, then you lean, step over their leg and attack for the armbar. This is a very high percentage attack follow-up system from the Kimura Trap. Another armbar option that you have is to step over your opponent's body and then bring your other leg over their shoulder instead of their head. This is a good option if you have trouble getting your leg over your opponent's head. You can then put it around their shoulder instead. If you pinch your knees together when you get this position, you will still have a good strong armbar attack on your opponent even though you do not have your leg over their head. When you step over your opponent's body and then over their shoulder, you can also switch to a triangle choke attack as well. So when you step over your opponent's body, you bring your other leg over your opponent's shoulder, grab your ankle, and pull your shin in so then that way you can secure the triangle. This is a very strong submission option and it can catch your opponent off guard from the Kimura Trap when they turn towards your legs in an attempt to escape. And just like mentioned before, when you go for the triangle choke from this scenario, if your opponent grabs their arms together, you can pull their wrist across your torso, which then gets them in an Americana lock. So you go for the triangle, they grab their hands together. When they grab their hands together, you pull their wrist across your torso, and then it will then lock their shoulder up in an Americana lock type situation. This is a good submission to do in an attempt to stop your opponent from defending your triangle choke. A classic attack to do when your opponent turns towards your legs and you can't stop them is to go to an upright Kimura. So when your opponent turns towards your legs, you follow them up and then you continue your attack for an upright Kimura. This is one of the most fundamental Kimura submissions that people learn, but it still works very well. When your opponent turns towards your legs to escape the Kimura Trap, you also have the option to follow them up and attack for a Toriko Plata. So when they turn away, throw your leg over their wrist and then block their body and then turn your body towards their shoulder. This will lock up their shoulder. When you throw your leg over their wrist will be trapped and it'll be hard for them to pull their arm out. This will give you the opportunity to attack for this submission in this situation. If your opponent has the ability to turn fully to the turtle position, you still have attack options while you have the Kimura Trap grip. One thing that I like to do is I like to get my opponent in a top crucifix position. So when they go all the way to the turtle position, I follow them up and then I will feed my leg around their arm and trap their arm so I can get them in the crucifix. This then presents me with different attacking options while I still have the Kimura Trap grip. A submission that I really like to do from the top crucifix is the armbar submission. So when my opponent turns toward my legs and gets to a full turtle position, I will then establish the crucifix and apply pressure to their wrist with my leg, driving back, getting the armbar pressure. So I come on top, I drive my leg into their wrist and I get the armbar. If it's your preference, you also have the option to roll into the crucifix as well. So when you get the arm trapped, you can roll and then get them into the T position with the crucifix. So you'll have them in the T Kimura Trap position, but in a crucifix scenario, which will present you with different opportunities to go for different attacks and submissions on your opponent. When you get on top, you trap their leg, roll to the crucifix, and attack from there. I find that when I have the crucifix in the T position, I can apply even more pressure on my opponent's arm doing the armbar. So when I roll through and I get the crucifix, I still have the Kimura Trap position. I bring my leg in front of their wrist and I drive their arm back so I can straighten their arm and get the armbar pressure on them. This is a very high percentage crucifix finish that I like to do, and it's one of my favorite submissions to do from the crucifix position as well, and combining it with the Kimura Trap. Another great option from the rolling crucifix when you have the Kimura Trap is also transitioning quickly to a one-arm rear naked choke. So you follow them up to the turtle and you get the rolling crucifix position and attack for the one-arm rear naked choke. When you do this, get a one-on-one position on their arm, so then that way you're controlling the other arm and it makes it hard for them to defend. So when you roll through, you control their arm and attack for the choke. When my opponent goes to a full turtle, I also like to attack for a shin behind the head arm attack series. This gives me the opportunity to go for different armbar and Kimura attack options against my opponent. When my opponent goes to a full turtle, when I have the Kimura Trap, I bring my shin behind their head, bring my other leg under their body, and then I go for a side armbar. I can also go for a Kimura, and if they try to jump over or roll, I can go for an armbar from the top as well. This attacking series, when my opponent goes to a turtle position, provides me with a lot of options to continue attacking my opponent even when they continue trying to escape. So I come up with them, put my shin behind their head, I attack for the armbar, I attack for the Kimura, and I can also attack for the top armbar if they try to jump over or roll. Another option from the shin behind position when they come to a full turtle is for me to actually go and take their back. So I go for the attacking series, but I see the opportunity to take their back instead. I put my shin behind their head, and then I use my free leg after I put my leg around their body to step backwards and take their back. Put my shin behind their head, step over, and then I step backwards so I can take their back and get behind them. This back mount may seem complicated, but it's actually easier than it looks. It's a good option to add if you like to do the shin behind the head attacks. Another option from the shin behind the head attack series when your opponent goes to a full turtle is to roll through and go for a triangle choke. So when you go for the shin behind the head position, you keep going, you feed your leg all the way through, turn your body, pull their head, and feed it into a triangle choke. So you go for a Kimura Trap, they go all the way to a turtle position by turning towards your legs, and then you follow them, put your shin behind their head, bring your leg over their body, through underneath their body, roll through, and pull their head in for a triangle choke. If your opponent stays in a steady position, you can pull them up into an upright position, which then gives you a lot of opportunities to do the attacks that we showed before. Many of the attack options are available to you that were shown when your opponent turns away towards your legs. The leg clamp choke is a very simple but brutal choke. When you do this, it creates a lot of pressure around your opponent's neck and it can really catch somebody off guard. You always also have the option to come up and attack for a Kimura from the top. So when your opponent isn't moving, you can come up to the top, step your leg over your opponent's head to get leverage, and then go for the Kimura from the top position so you can get the finish. Another strong Kimura option is to actually do the Kimura on the near side. What we mean by near side is your body goes on the same side as the Kimura. So when you come up, you move your body to the opposite side of your opponent's head, so you're on the same side of the Kimura and you get the finish that way. To gain even more control on the near side Kimura, I like to get a hugging position on their arm. So I'll take my arms and I'll hug my opponent's arm, sit through onto the near side, and finish the Kimura this way as well. And like previously shown in the video, you can pick your opponent's head up and then sit to and over the shoulder armbar. So you put pressure into your opponent's head, you lift their shoulder up by using the Kimura Trap to lift their body up. Then you sit down while bringing your bottom leg over your opponent's shoulder, your top leg over their body, and you finish the armbar in that manner. I'm a big fan of the crucifix and crucifix attacks. So what I'll do many times is I'll lift my opponent's arm away from their chest, feed my leg through their arms so I can get them in the crucifix position and work my attacks that way. One of the most common attacks from the spinning Kimura trap is to take your opponent's back. So when you have the opportunity to spin underneath them and then work to the Kimura trap, you want to get behind them, catch their hip with your leg, and then scoot your body out so that way you can secure the back position. This dynamic back take is actually a very effective technique to use. And during the transition of your spin, if you have the ability to catch your opponent's head with your leg, you can then tip them back and attack for an armbar. So as you're spinning, you bring your leg across their face, drop them down to their back, and then you go for an armbar attack on them instead to go for the submission finish. If I go for the spin and I can't take my opponent's back or go for the armbar, I like to reverse my position and bring my shin behind my opponent's head so I can go for the shin behind the head armbar attack as well. So I go for this spin, I feel like I can't take their back, I then reverse my position, bring my shin behind their head, and then I finish the armbar in a side type position so I can go for this finish. It is very common for your opponent to roll when you go for the shin behind the head armbar. So you want to be prepared for this and continue moving with them so in that way you can finish the armbar from the top. So when you go for the shin behind the head armbar, you want to keep that pressure behind their head with your shin so then that way you can keep strong contact with them and still continue to go for the submission finish on your opponent. From the Kimura trap spin, whenever I go for the shin behind armbar, I'm always presented with the opportunity to go for my opponent's back as well. So when I spin and I go for the shin behind attacks, if I can't get the armbar, I can step back and then attack my opponent's back instead. This creates a very dynamic attacking system from the spinning Kimura trap. It gives me the opportunity to attack my opponent in many different ways. So I spin, bring my shin behind their head, step back, and I take their back instead. Thank you for watching. For more details on these Kimura Trap concepts, plus a lot more Kimura Trap techniques and details, please visit the Grappler's Guide. For more videos like this, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell icon. Thank you.